See some new faces here and some familiar faces as well. And because it is a Chinese holiday this week, Golden Week, I'd like to ask Diana Ding from Ding Ding TV to come up and just say a few welcoming remarks in Chinese for us. So, okay, thanks, Diana. Diana Ding.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Wow. Thank you, and everybody. I'm so honored. I guess that's a sign of globalization, right? We're going to have multi-language later on, and Rebecca has been co-hosting the show Innovation Dialogue with me, and we are very good friends. Since we're supposed to speak Chinese, right? Okay. 欢迎大家光临呢，就是硅谷龙的这个盛会。那 Rebecca 呢，每年一度在举行这样的盛会的时候呢，也就探讨跟中国的合作和未来发展的方向，跟硅谷的合作和世界的这个前景。所以非常的欢迎大家的光临。Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Diana. So if you haven't seen her show, Innovation Dialogue, I urge you to tune in, and Diana can give you more details about the webcast of our event tonight as well, which is being recorded by Ding Ding TV. So next, I would like to welcome Gary Matuszak, a partner from KPMG, to the stage. So hey.
Do you want me to sit here? Was that the idea?
Yeah, no, let's sit and have a chat here. Okay, why don't you grab it?
I'll grab this one.
Yeah.
How's that?
So KPMG has just released a very interesting tech innovation survey and report. And it's based on interviews with more than 700 global technology executives. And the findings of this report are pretty interesting. Or maybe I better scoot down because I see this part of the audience can't even see us. Okay.
Sneak around the corner.
Sneak around the corner. Maybe, okay.
Do you want me to move
So,
down?
no, this is fine. I think everybody can see and hear us, right? So, Gary, I think we'd like to highlight some of the China tech findings from that global technology report. So, I mean, what are some of the real surprises from that report? Because I thought there were some actually, there were some real surprises in the report. So, I mean, did you find it surprising at all? I mean, you led this this survey, right?
Yeah, in fact, it was quite surprising. I mean, the couple of things that we looked at, as you know, and actually Rebecca helped us with part of the survey and some of the interviews. So, but we looked at the areas of innovation in terms of technologies that would be leading over the disruptive technologies over the next 3 to 5 years and beyond. And then we looked at geographies in terms of where do people see innovation occurring. And just to give you a perspective, and not to talk a lot about our survey, but to give you a perspective of the demographics, it was a global survey of executives from various countries. Actually, the biggest region represented was Asia Pacific with a little over 40%. The biggest country was the U.S., so there were about 25% of the responses were from the U.S., but 14 or 15% from Asia, 10% Korea, 10% India, Israel, et cetera. So a good representation. And when you looked at the area of where do people believe innovation is going to come from over the next 5 to 10 years, U.S. and China were neck and neck as the two leading countries for innovation, which was a big, it wasn't expected.
Yeah.
And then when you looked at, there was a question we threw out there that raised a lot of controversy, which was, do you think that Silicon Valley will be overtaken as the innovation capital of the world in the next 4 years? And again, this is, I'm not saying it's my view, it's the view of the people that in the survey, but about 40-some% said, yes, we believe that. So first of all, the time frame is 4 years, which is much shorter than what any of us ever think it would happen. And a lot of those responses came from the people responding throughout Asia, in particular China, where there is certainly a nationalistic view that they are going to foster significant innovation and eventually, whether you say overtake, but at least become on par with the U.S. and with Silicon Valley from an innovation perspective. So we
Yeah.
can debate that a little bit today, but that
Yeah.
nonetheless, that's what that was what the survey indicated.
Well, it was interesting in that there was this disconnect. The people in Silicon Valley thought that America led tech innovations, and the people in China responded and said, well, we're the best. So there was this huge disconnect, and neither one of them had a high regard for the others.
Right.
Technology. So,
It was kind of interesting because, as you know, we actually saw each other last week. We were doing a series of e-commerce events, part of it around this in Hong Kong, Beijing, and Shanghai. So it was a real interesting debate over there on this. But our point was, well, there doesn't necessarily have to be a winner and a loser per se, because we are seeing innovation occurring a lot of places in the world, particularly in Asia Pacific. But we see it in India, we see it in Israel, we see it in Korea, in Japan yet as well. But when you
How
start
about Brazil?
stacking, where?
Brazil?
Brazil, yes, thank you, Brazil as well. But when you start looking at all those, you realize that just the magnitude of the investment, as well as the magnitude of what I'll say the power of the consumer in China, means there's going to be significant innovation there, and it is by far rising the fastest.
So Gary, you just got back from China, and you said everybody there, I was there too, and everybody there is talking about 10 cents WeChat, right?
Yes, I've got it.
And you signed up already, right?
All you got to do is shake your phone, and then, yeah.
Right. How many people here have signed up for WeChat? Oh, a fair number.
We've got a few.
Are you using it pretty regularly or not? Okay. Good. So I think this is one of the first Chinese innovations to go global. And
Yes, it is.
And
Yeah.
really fast, too. It's taken off like lightning. So is there anything else on the horizon like that from China, or is this kind of an anomaly?
No, I mean, I think as I look at where innovation will most likely occur in China, the areas where it will most likely occur, and I think to a large degree it already is occurring and has occurred, is areas where, as they say, a necessity is the motherhood of invention. So the areas where you're seeing the most innovation are the areas where it's something that's not originally actually covered now, and a lot of it is around the consumer area, and in particular, mobile commerce, mobile payments, those type things. I mean, what I saw in China and other parts of Asia 5 years ago was not, they were way ahead of us then. They still are now in terms of adoption. And so I think that's the biggest opportunity over there. And because of the size of that, middle class and the market over there, to date, there hasn't been a significant demand for those companies to step outside of China and try to, commercialize their product on a more global basis. Other than, say, Huawei and Lenovo, there aren't a lot of examples, if you will, of global technology companies anyway coming out of China.
So what about the mobile internet? Is that a lot more advanced in China than it is in the U.S.?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I think the use of it is definitely, yes, much more advanced. And particular on areas where, I say, mobile commerce and mobile payments. And, it's the same thing that's happening in some of the countries in Africa as well. And it's the difference between a convenience and a necessity, right? So over there, they're getting something that doesn't exist already, and they're not, to the most part, when you get outside of some of the major cities, encumbered by an infrastructure that exists here that they've got to overcome, so you can kind of leapfrog. But what I did find interesting, and this is only by word of mouth, so I can't confirm this, but most of the networks over there where we once thought they were so advanced are still 3G. I say still 3G like that's old, but
Right.
Versus here, a lot of them have moved on to the 4G and beyond. So they are very advanced. I have better cell coverage in some of the remote areas of China than I do up and down Highway 280. So
Yeah, exactly.
I can't complain about that.
And it works in the subway, too.
Yes.
And I can't get it to work in New York City subways. So.
Right. But I think, there certainly is a lot of innovation that's happening, and the Chinese government is putting a lot of money into it. One of the things that was interesting is when we started talking about the areas, or asking about the areas for the most enabling technologies over the next 3 to 4 years, on a global basis, cloud came first and then mobile. And when you looked at the disparity.
So cloud computing.
Cloud computing, right.
Overall.
Both on a consumer side and an enterprise side. And when
Okay.
you looked at it on the consumer side, the ratio for cloud was much higher in China, in part, I think, because they view themselves on some of the mobile, particularly in the consumer area, some of the mobile technologies and mobile commerce as saying, yeah, we've already kind of there and doing a lot of that. So, and the Chinese government, as I said, is putting significant amount of investment into building out a cloud infrastructure, and that's kind of the way they believe they're going to connect the unconnected, if you will.
Yeah, that's a good phrase, connect the unconnected. So what about security and privacy issues in China versus the U.S.? How did that weigh in?
Interestingly enough, it was not as big of a concern. As much, when we looked at it on a global basis, yes, it was a concern, both on the consumer and the enterprise side, but much less of a concern in China. And we were trying to speculate on why that might be.
Yeah.
Other than people say, look, I mean, again, I don't have an option. This is a way for me to connect whether there are privacy issues or not.
Right.
This is my way of doing something I couldn't do before, versus here, people, particularly in the consumer side, are a bit more reluctant, saying, well, until this stuff is resolved, I may not necessarily jump in wholeheartedly yet.
Right, right.
But
yeah, so any other big takeaways from the report and the survey? And while I'm asking Gary that, and if anyone has a question from the audience, or Diana wants to jump in here with a question, now would be a good time.
yeah, I mean, I think the big takeaway from us, if you look at it from a China perspective, is that there is very much an attitude of we are going to become an innovation leader, and there's a lot of focus and investment around the Chinese. Their 5-year plans focus very heavily on investment, and in fact, one of the things that was mostly just in China is a role within corporations called the Chief Innovation Officer.
Yeah, that's pretty uncommon.
Very prevalent over there. Outside of China, practically non-existent.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure. I'm not trying to make a qualitative assessment of how effective it is, but
Right.
the role exists because of an acknowledgement that we need to focus on innovation. So that was one very surprising thing. The other thing I would say is just this nationalistic view that we can innovate and we can compete on a global market. I think it's a long ways off. I think the rest of the infrastructure, and we all know the infrastructure that exists here, the ecosystem, I'll say, that exists here to support innovation, and more importantly, commercializing innovation. And that has got a long way to go, I think,
Yeah.
in China. So it's going to be a while, but they certainly are very bullish on their prospects.
Well, okay, thanks, Gary. And we're going to be distributing the publication, the KPMG publication, at this event, so stay tuned for that. Thanks, Gary.
All right, thank you.
What is an innovation?
I feel very confident.
Found out that anyone that had a really interesting idea.
Usable for everybody.
So finding the fit is very important.
Doing things the right way.
Here, new partnerships, new licensing, new investments take place.
Innovation Dialogue. East meets West in Silicon Valley.